Good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to see everyone today. I'm Tamara McGregor, the IMNIS coordinator here at the Australian Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering, or as we also like to call it, ATSE. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands from where I'm joining you from today, the Ngunnawal people, and I pay my respects to the elders past and present. I'd like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people joining us today, as well as acknowledge the traditional owners of whatever country you are joining us from today. As we come together to share and discuss our knowledge and expertise, we also recognise the traditional knowledge and deep history of Australia's First Peoples as the world's oldest surviving culture and Australia's first scientists and technologists. Before we get on to today's session, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. We would like to remind everyone that you've all agreed to abide by ATSE's Code of Conduct. This includes when you enter your questions into the Q&A channel. This webinar will be recorded and the recording will be made available later on ATSE's YouTube channel. Captions are enabled today, so if you require them, they should pop up on the bottom of your screen. Be sure to submit your questions in the Q&A box. We'd love to hear from you. You should be able to submit them at any point during the Q&A today. Before I hand over to today's moderator and our brilliant panelists, I'd like to share a little bit about myself. So I'm really passionate about supporting the next generation of scientists through STEM outreach programs. I started my STEM journey studying chemistry and science communication. This led me to work in health promotion and community development. I've now come back to a more kind of science focused working here at ATSE in the STEM outreach program, helping PhD students and early career researchers through a mentoring program to help them discover what career pathways are available to them. I also do a little bit of volunteering, focusing on National Science Week and Curious Minds. So this wonderful webinar series is brought to you today by ATSE's National STEM Education Initiative, Stellar. Stellar is designed to engage young people in rich STEM learning at school by using hands-on and curriculum-aligned resources to explore the principles of sustainability and renewable energy. You can find out more by visiting their website at stellar.org.au. So the theme for today's session is Sustainable Oceans, Sustainable Skills, celebrating World Ocean Day. It's an exciting chance for us to take a deep dive into the world of ocean sustainability and the career opportunities that will shape your future of our planet. With that, it's now my absolute pleasure to introduce to you our first speaker, an ATSE Fellow, Dr. Alistair Hobday, who is joining us live from the RV Investigator. So here's a little bit about Alistair. Alistair is a leading researcher investigating climate change and extreme events on marine biodiversity and fishery resources, and adaptation options to underpin sustainable use and conservation into the future. He's a highly cited researcher with more than 350 publications. Alistair co-founded the International Marine Heatwaves Group and the Oceania Ecological Forecasting Initiative. Really excited that you're here with us today, and I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Tamara. Welcome to all the students, educators, and other members of the community joining us today. I'm proud to say that I'm on Yuin Nation today, the land and sea country managed by those people. And it's because I'm on the research vessel Investigator. We're 14 nautical miles, or about 25 kilometres, off the shelf edge of New South Wales. The water here is about 150 metres deep, and in another 20 kilometres, it falls away to about 4,000 metres of water depth. So it's great to be here today celebrating World Oceans Day, which was actually Sunday, and talking about the great and exciting careers in this field. And there really is a wide diversity of activities that happen, like on board the vessel I'm on now. We've got 60 people on board. We're at sea for 30 days. About 30 of those 60 people are researchers, and the rest are the engineers, the cooks, the crew, the skipper and the master and those kind of things. We're doing a bunch of research exploring what's happened in this area of the ocean over the past 30 years. And Southeast Australia is called a climate change hotspot. That's a place where the ocean is warming faster than other places around the world. And so we need to study it here to see what's going to happen to other locations. I'm just going to turn my screen around so you can get a vision of the cabin that I'm standing in now. And as you look out to sea then, I'll just say that the two other panelists that are going to join us today are Dr. Zoe Doubleday and Beth O'Sullivan, and they're going to showcase some of the vast array of opportunities available for students and tell them how they got to where they are today. Before I introduce them, though, I'll tell you a bit more about my own work and career path. So I was born in Australia and went to high school and studied science subjects then through to about grade 12. And then I moved across the Pacific to university. I did my undergraduate and honors degree in Northern California in Palo Alto at Stanford University. And my honors thesis was on the movement of limpets in the intertidal zone. And that was the first time I really began to think about, well, what's a question I find really interesting? And that question that I've pursued through my career is, why do animals live where they do? How do they move? And how do they cope with human pressures in that environment? And with limpets, the question was, how do they cope with being dry each day when the tides go down? They're a marine species, but they're sometimes dry and they're sometimes wet. And I was really interested in that survival question. After finishing my undergraduate degree, I moved to San Diego and did a PhD looking at the dispersal of giant kelp. Kelp normally grows attached to the bottom. Large storms rip it up and it forms these floating rafts, as you can see in that picture in the middle under the word, on top of the word PhD. Those rafts carry a lot of biology with them and can drift from one part of the ocean to the other, kind of connecting different habitats. After this 5-year PhD, I did a postdoctoral position in San Diego working on white abalone. And that was the first marine species to be added to the US endangered species list. It was really heavily exploited and was in very small numbers. I then moved a bit further north for a second postdoctoral position working on Pacific salmon. So I'm kind of working my way up the food chain from kelp through to abalone up to salmon now, and looking at what influences their survival in the ocean. I moved back to Australia in the year 2000 and began working on the movement patterns of southern bluefin tuna and trying to understand why they swim where they do and how do they survive the waters of southern Australia. Since then, it's been a really varied journey working at CSIRO, and we do projects that last between 1 and 3 years on a whole range of topics. One that I've been passionate about is helping understand how species will cope with climate change. And the picture there in the middle lower of the screen is of shy albatross. And I was involved in a project where we built artificial nests to make sure that the birds' eggs wouldn't be swamped in heavy rainfall events. And so these artificial nests help improve breeding success and make sure more albatross hatched each year. So I think that's kind of the journey for me. And it's a fantastic day to be joining you from the ocean today. It's such a great career choice. I really do feel excited about it. So let me now introduce the first of the two speakers that I'm proud to welcome today, which is Dr. Zoe Doubleday. Zoe has used her combined experience in marine ecology and geochemistry to develop methods to trace the provenance of seafood. Now, provenance of seafood means where does it come from? By understanding where it comes from, her aim is to help combat seafood fraud and illegal fishing practices that threaten Australia's sustainable and multi-billion-dollar seafood industry. But fraud occurs when people don't exactly know where the food has come from, and it can be due to labeling mistakes or deliberate deception. If you solve that problem, you can help sustainable fishing flourish. Zoe's technology measures the chemical composition of seafood's bones and shells. Certain chemicals are absorbed by marine animals as their shells develop, with different levels in those shells depending on where the animal has lived. It kind of absorbs a bit of its environmental signal. By doing that, look at that environmental signal, she can compare that with chemical maps of the ocean and identify where that species grew up. It's a pretty amazing technique and can be used for many marine species. Zoe, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Alistair, and it's great to be here. So we'll just wait till that slide comes up. Beautiful. So I'm speaking from Kaurna country in Adelaide, South Australia, and just linking in some of Alistair's work. You know, right now we've been experiencing a marine heat wave in the region, which has been linked to quite a significant algal bloom, which is shaping and impacting a lot of the marine life around here. That you may have heard that on the news. So going back to where it all started for me is, so I grew up in remote rural location in Tasmania. So that bottom picture there is a mountain. It's in Quamby Bluff, the Great Western Tiers. So I grew up very much connected to nature. You know, I'd hear Tasmanian devils screeching at night. We'd have to like batter tiger snakes out the way walking back from school. And so that nature connection, maybe it was a bit too connected, made me very curious about the natural environment and how it worked, and gave me a sense of stewardship of, I want to help protect this beautiful thing that we have, which is nature, which is also helping to look after us. So when I was thinking about what to do with my life, I sort of was at crossroads because I loved some creative topics like creative writing, but I love science and biology. And I thought, well, science might pay the bills better in the future rather than relying on my creative skills. So I chose science. But I did sort of have a fear of science as well because I was homeschooled for many years and I didn't have formal science training. So I felt that I came from a non-traditional background and whether it would be too hard or I didn't have the right skills or sets going through. But I pushed forward and I enrolled in science degrees. I love the university environment. I love studying science and I didn't look back. And my studies, I was focusing on terrestrial aspects, but then I moved more towards marine. And it wasn't, so I love the coasts. My family moved towards the coast and I lived very much on the beach later on in my life. But it wasn't so much from swimming and diving because I found it very cold in Tasmania a lot of the time. It was because I felt that so much we knew about the land, we always were so much further behind than what we knew in the sea. And as we know, most of the planet is made up of ocean. So I thought the marine world needed more eyes and ears, and that's why I chose down that path to study our oceans. And so once I finished studies, I got my first research job in South Australia, where I started to use these methods of looking at the chemistry in the shells and bones of marine animals. And it's a powerful method because we can look at old discarded samples from museums or people's collections in people's offices. And there's such a rich set of data inside these organisms that we can look at environmental change, we can look at how the animal's changing, how it's moving, how it's impacted. And when we're often resource poor in science, it's a powerful method to collect much needed data. And then a big next step was getting a research fellowship funded by the federal government, which enabled me to set up my own lab and drive my own research, and importantly, support that next generation of scientists coming through. So I continued this work looking at the chemistry of shells and bones. I've got a picture of some abalone there, also linking in with Alistair's work. And that ties in that work with what I did with developing technology to trace the provenance of seafood and supports sustainable seafood production, because it's an important source of protein and nutrients for people around the world. I also do a lot of work on cephalopods. So that's octopus, squid, and cuttlefish. And this is a picture here of some beautiful arms of a southern keeled octopus, which is one of our local octopus species, which one of my students worked on. So, and then another aspect I've picked really passionate about is working on science communication and writing and bringing that aspect of myself into my science. And it is a myth that a lot of the work we do is not creative, and it is. There's so many aspects of that you can bring into research. So I actually do research in science communication and writing, and how as scientists we can communicate what we do in better ways. So that's sort of me in wrapping up. I've got a picture of my baby when he was young. He's now 3 years old. And it was a challenge when he was born balancing that. But I think a lot of people don't talk about the benefits as well and trying to have that work-life balance. And I think it's very much enriched my life experience, which has just informed my science in having children, and also they're very mindful, so you can come home and at the end of the day switch off and change, so you're more refreshed for the next day. So that was a challenge, but also something that has enriched my career. So you can do both. So that wraps me up. Have a wonderful Oceans Day, well, belatedly so, and we'll pass on to the next speaker.
Hey, thanks, Zoe. I'll see you back for some questions in a little while. So I'm going to try and, can you see out my window? No, it's too glary now. The next speaker, Beth O'Sullivan, is a second-year PhD candidate, and PhDs come in this pathway after you finished an undergraduate degree in science or any other aspects. Actually, today we take PhDs with a whole range of backgrounds. Beth's investigating novel marine restoration practices, rethinking how we use materials, and then design and do digital fabrication in the development of artificial coral reefs. Her transdisciplinary research merges ecological science, genomics, materials science, computation, and digital crafts, aiming to advance holistic coral reef habitat restoration. A significant aspect of Beth's work is fostering collaboration across diverse sectors. She works closely with a whole range of science disciplines, including chemistry, biology, and genetics with eDNA, and with digital design specialists. Communicating research through art and design is also central to her approach. And Beth has been in exhibitions throughout the Canberra region, most recently at a solo exhibition at the Canberra Museum and Gallery and the Canberra Design Festival in collaboration with the National Zoo and Aquarium and Craft and Design Canberra. Beth has already received several awards and scholarships, including the very prestigious Australian Academy of Technological Science and Engineering's Elevate Scholarship. Beth, I'm really looking forward to hearing about your journey.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, and it's wonderful to be here today. I'm speaking from the land of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people here in Canberra, and you might notice Canberra's landlocked, but that hasn't stopped me from studying marine science. So you'll see a couple of videos playing in the background here, and I'll kind of come to them throughout the talk. But today I'm going to briefly talk to you about my journey into STEM or STEAM from high school to where I am now doing my research that I kind of never imagined I'd be doing. And hopefully this gives you a taste of what is possible when you follow your interests and when you're not quite sure where you're going. So like many of you might be experiencing now in year 9, 10, or 11, when you're starting to choose your subjects, I didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted to do at university or what kind of career I wanted. So throughout my childhood and into high school, I always loved art and design and creative crafts and the hands-on making side of things. But I also loved being in nature and hiking and swimming and snorkeling and observing the incredible interconnectedness of the environment and how organisms interacted with both the natural and built environments, which is ecology. So in high school, faced with subject choice, I decided to keep things very broad. And you can see here over in the kind of timeline, I did maths, biology, visual arts, English, and ancient history. So it was very, very open. I wanted to keep everything kind of like, oh, what do I do? Where do I go? And so I think what was really important to me at the time was that hands-on making in visual arts and design, as well as this passion for biology. And I really gravitated at that point towards plant sciences. So that kind of led me to in year 12, when you're starting to choose university courses, to pursue a double degree. And so I did a double degree in a Bachelor of Design and a Bachelor of Science, and I focused my science degree on evolution and ecology and organismal biology. And this was mainly focused on terrestrial ecology. And I kind of went through my degree mainly focused on plant sciences. So I did functional ecology courses in the rainforest, and I did a lot of my subject selection based on whether they had a field work component, so whether I could get out into the field and do some fun research. But then I ended up doing a marine science course in tropical coral reef research on Lady Elliot Island in 2021. And that got me really, I grew up by the ocean and I loved the ocean, but that experience out there really showed me a whole new world of research and scientific investigation. So that was a really pivotal moment in my university courses. Towards the end of my double degree, I kind of thought, oh, well, I don't know what I want to do. Maybe I kind of had this chance encounter with a marine biologist who talked about how she uses creative practice in her research. And I kind of posed her the question of, why are a lot of our artificial reefs and artificial habitats made from plastic or concrete or metal and clay? And so we kind of got talking about this, and I pitched kind of like an honors project that would be looking at combining a material science work where we'd be investigating a calcium carbonate based material, designing it and trying to figure out if we could make something, and then using that material to develop artificial reefs, and then testing them in the reef tanks or in the ocean. And that kind of has led through my honors. That's what I did through my honors. And then I transitioned that into a PhD, which was another thing I never kind of thought that I would do. So this is kind of where I'm at now, where I'm using my kind of design skills as well as my science skills to investigate and design for non-humans. So a lot of design work is focused around human-centered design, and I'm thinking about it in a multi-species way. So like, how do I design objects for non-humans and corals and for marine life? This combination of material science, digital fabrication, and design has been a really exciting space. And the ATSE Elevate Scholarship that I received last year and for the duration of my PhD has allowed me to do so much in this research space. So currently I have my fieldwork out on Christmas Island, and I go out there once a year with my supervisor, and we are currently deploying some research tiles that then we'll extract, do some eDNA analysis of that, and then feed that information back into the design system and the design process to develop better artificial habitats. And so this image, this video down here in the bottom is an example of some of the kind of artworks or science communication works that I've done in the past. And this was exhibited at the ANU, but also at the Canberra Museum and Gallery. And it is a 3-month time lapse showing how the algae and the organisms interact with the calcium carbonate 3D printed objects. And if you'd seen in the top right-hand corner, that was a video of the 3D printer working on a very fast speed. It's much slower than that. So when I was kind of reflecting on my kind of journey, I think a journey into my PhD and where I am now, I think what's been most important to me is following my curiosity and my kind of interests, as well as asking for help and asking questions. I think I've become quite good at asking questions, even the silly ones. And I think what I've been able to identify is that, making hands-on things is important to me. So if you're in your late stages of high school, think about what drives you and what's important to you, and then you'll be able to fill that pursue that feeling into your STEM career. Yeah, and I think that, just in closing, I think now more than ever we need creative people in STEM, and that's really exciting. So thank you.
Hey, thanks very much, Beth, for sharing your journey to where you find yourself today. Zoe, I hope that on this virtual panel at the moment that you will rejoin us now, and that everyone will see both Zoe, Beth on the screen, and myself. We're keen to answer any questions coming from the live audience, which you can post into the Q&A, which you must be staring at on your computer screens, and we'd be very happy to answer any of those questions. One that's come up right now that I think will be great to get your views on is, particularly Zoe, what range of subjects have students done when they are able to do marine science as an undergraduate and then moving on to, say, different studies as graduate students? Is there a best set of subjects, or can it be quite broad?
It can be broad because ocean science and marine science is broad. It can be more down the creative route or social science route, or it can be more like focused on the mathematical sciences. But there are some, I think, obviously, if some coming from a biological background, doing your courses in ecology and biology, in my area, I work with a lot of geochemists and work with chemistry. And I think if I had done some chemistry foundations, that would have supported me in the research that I do now. And then some of those quantitative skills in statistics is extremely useful. And I also say that a lot of our job does involve writing, and someone that really loves that, those writing aspects of science. And I don't think probably students might hear it enough, that if you do love English and those sorts of topics, they can be extremely useful towards a science career or career in ocean science.
Yeah, you definitely mentioned a whole breadth of topics there. We have branches of marine science called chemical oceanography, physical oceanography, biological oceanography, geological oceanography. Atmospheric science also happens over the ocean. And so there's a whole range of backgrounds. I've found that typically at high school, it's not worth focusing too much on marine stuff. It doesn't get taught very widely in Australia. So nobody's really doing very much marine studies at high school. By the time you get to into undergraduate, you're generally still doing a general degree. And for many people, the study of oceanography in the oceans really begins as a graduate experience.
Yes.
But I'd say find something you're passionate about the ocean, and that will be the stimulus for keeping going into this kind of career. Because at times when you're writing in the dark, or that you're at sea and you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, it's your passion for the material that will really keep you going.
And I think, as Alistair said and Beth demonstrated, by keeping it broad early on, that can help find what you're interested in, because often you don't know what you're interested in until you give it a go. So not being too worried about doing specialist things right on the early stages, but having that broad base, and then you'll find where your skills and talents lie.
Beth, was there any particular thing that ignited your passion for marine science that you could relate to either courses or people you met along the way?
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit, but that coral reef field study course that I did on Lady Elliot Island was really pivotal for me as a designer to think about materials and, like, well, how do these organisms make this? How do they make this rock? What's happening in this space to make this?
Beth, did anybody suggest that course to you, or was it a big jump that you took on your own?
It was just a big jump. I think, like I said, I was looking for as many field courses that I could do as possible. I just applied for every single one. And this was one that I got into. And, I loved the ocean and I love snorkeling, but I'd never been, scuba diving or anything like that. I've only recently learned to scuba dive because of this research that I'm doing now. So that coral reef field studies course was that kind of catalyst. Yeah, I think then meeting Dr. Jenny Millella, who talked about how she engaged artists to make her settlement tiles, and how she worked across art and marine science, that was kind of like, oh wait, people do this, and people are interested in combining these things. So
Yeah.
that was
Yep.
where it was.
Actually, Beth, you've used the word settlement tile a few times.
Oh yes.
As I understand it, it's just like an ordinary tile that you might put on your wall or your floor that you put out in the ocean to see what settles on it. Is that right?
Yes. And we're looking at settlement tiles, so just a normal tile, but we're putting grooves in them as well. So we're kind of investigating what might be the best set of kind of parameters that we can design with to create a habitat for corals to grow in. So yeah, so material and then the design.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Zoe, how broad is marine biology? Does it include studying things like seabirds and aquatic sea snakes and other marine taxa like that, even crocodiles? Do you think that's part of marine biology?
Yes, it's in my view it is. I've always sort of taken quite a broad view, and marine biology goes right into the estuarine space where fresh water and land meet with the sea. So a lot of that interacts and it's very related, and there's not often hard boundaries. Yes, seabirds, sea snakes, probably polar bears come into that. And even like salt marsh ecosystems or mangrove ecosystems where you've got these plant-based habitats, these flowering plants that also have strong connections to our coasts and oceans.
I've particularly liked working on seabirds in my career, and they're obviously eating marine species. They're spending a lot of their time at sea, and so top predators like seabirds are definitely an important part of marine science. On this voyage, we're doing observations of seabirds throughout the voyage, and we're comparing how many a person can count versus how many a camera system that we have on board the vessel can count. And our hope is that we'll be able to put cameras on boats going around Australia in future that will automatically record seabirds, and then using artificial intelligence will do the counts of how many birds are being seen at sea. And then we can relate that to the productivity of the ocean in different parts of Australia. When the ocean is very productive, you would expect more seabirds to be gathering. And so they can be a really important indicator of ocean health.
So you're using the seabirds as a proxy of ocean health.
Yes, we are.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Yep.
Got some.
Beth or Zoe, have you, can you remember the first time you either went snorkeling or diving? And how did you feel about that as a formational experience? Beth, tell me about first getting in the water.
Trying to remember mine first.
As I say, I grew up by the ocean, so I've been snorkeling for as long as I can remember, and swimming and ocean swimming. But my first diving experience was last year, and I kind of just went straight in. I went straight to the open water PADI certification. And I was really
May I ask you, how old were you when you did that?
25. Yeah, so I was really, really scared of diving, but it really opened. My mind was blown. I'd been snorkeling in this area in Cabbage Tree Bay in Sydney for years. I'd been going, and then I went and did this PADI course there, and I didn't realize how much life was in this small space. And I got to see all of these sponges and I just thought it was incredible, and now I just love it. It's so exciting. I haven't dived much. I've only done like 6 dives in my life, but yeah.
Yeah, so I learned to dive in my 20s, and I haven't dived that much either. And I think feeling the cold and growing up in colder waters, I was always a bit like, oh. But then I've done lots of snorkeling because you can just do it very quickly, and it was cheap. And I think as a student, I found diving expensive. But what it does is, I think there's this thing called ocean blindness because we can't see what's there. And even if you study it your whole life, you really need to see it to experience that otherworldliness and really get a sense of this, the magnificence that it is. And it is also incredibly peaceful being surrounded by fish and kelp. And it does make you go, wow. Yeah.
I think it allows you to slow down.
Yeah.
Like when you're snorkeling and you dive down to go see something, you can't spend as much time. Whereas when I was diving, that's what I really found. I could look at one rock for a very long time.
You're very much living in that moment and not thinking about much else.
Yeah.
So diving will let us have a look under the ocean to a depth of about 10 or 20 meters. On this voyage, we're surveying waters up to 400 or 500 meters deep. And every night we put down a machine called the deep towed camera. And that's going along the bottom for a 3-kilometer length of the sea floor. And all the scientists gather in this one room and we watch it on the big screen, this silent movie of the bottom of the sea floor with all these different animals moving past the camera. And it's just a fascinating experience. So yeah, being able to look at what we're studying is so important.
Incredible.
We're talking to a lot of students and teachers today, and I'm going to just pose a question from a teacher who must be loving this presentation so much. They're thinking about what are their opportunities in marine science. We see lots of people come back to study at university now who've had a second career. And so there are opportunities for people to come back to do marine science at any age, really, if you can do the training. But I'll pivot that question slightly to say, again, this research vessel has opportunities for science teachers to come out to sea and do voyages around Australia. And then they can get an experience of what it's like to be at sea with researchers and take that back to their high school classrooms. So I'd hope that many of the teachers would think about taking a research opportunity as a teacher rather than leaving the teaching profession to come and be a marine scientist. I'm just scanning the questions. We've got time for a couple more. Yeah, Beth, here's one for you. You're making artificial reefs and you've used a couple of materials. What do you reckon? Do we need to make them out of the same material as the natural reefs, or what about using plastic or concrete?
So yeah, that was kind of the question that I've been investigating. Is a lot of artificial reefs and restoration objects that we put into the reef system are made from plastics and concretes and metal. And these are really quite carbon intensive materials. And I kind of set out that, the reason why a lot of these materials are used is because they're cheap and they're accessible. And so I kind of set out to think about, well, can we make a more natural biocompatible? So that's, it's sea life can interact with it, eat it, grow on it, live on it, out of calcium carbonate. And can this be cost effective? Can it be cheap? Can it be accessible? And so far, that's kind of what this PhD research is. So we've deployed some ceramic tiles, and we're comparing the growth of sessile marine organisms on the terracotta tiles versus this calcium carbonate material. And then I guess we'll see if it works as well, but it is a less carbon intensive process. So a more sustainable material, hopefully, than concrete, for example.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Beth. I'm picking another one in the chat that we've used this word ocean productivity, which means how much life the ocean can support. And it typically comes from nutrients in the ocean. This question asks me about, is pouring sewage into the ocean a good thing? human waste does have nutrients in it. And if it was pure nutrients, it could be good for the ocean in some locations. But unfortunately, sewage today has got all kinds of other things in it, like hormones, chemicals, fatbergs, the wipes that people mistakenly flush down the toilet. So raw sewage at the moment contains much more negative things than the good things that are in the sewage. So I would definitely think that pouring raw sewage into the ocean is not the productivity solution. But people are investigating ways that you might fertilize different parts of the ocean. And if you can fertilize the phytoplankton, it may take up more carbon, and maybe that could be a way of reducing the greenhouse gas effect. But even those fertilization experiments are very complicated and very controversial because they may upset the balance of life. And so we really don't have enough knowledge yet to really understand how real ocean fertilization would work and if it's a good thing for humanity to try. I think the simplest approach is to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in general, rather than trying to have them and offset them with with fertilization of the ocean.
Mm.
We also have sewage spills that close down different aquaculture industries as well. And that shows us that the pollution is not good for the ocean, like oysters or mussel farms typically have to close. May I just ask one more before we wrap up to both Zoe and Beth? What are some other experiences that you think you would point high school students, 16 to 18 years old, what experiences could they look for to get a taste of becoming a marine scientist? Zoe, may I ask you that first, please, and then I'll come to Beth.
In the university space, once you enroll, there are summer, like a lot of universities run things like summer scholarships, which can be really great, where you can work in a research lab for a few weeks over summer. There can be volunteer opportunities, and maybe outside university there might be volunteer opportunities through not-for-profit organisations or museums, and that can really set you up with that broader level experience and getting that scientific thought process going. It's sort of looking out for opportunities, and sometimes you can create your own by writing to people and seeing what's out there, what's available.
Yeah, I think for me, I have cold emailed a lot of people asking questions and asking, like, how do they do something, or what, is there something that I can volunteer on or work with them? But that's kind of my only experience and movement into the marine science field is through connecting with Dr. Jenny Malella, who I met at an exhibition, and then doing that coral reef course at university. But I know that if you're living by the coast, and there might be some friends of groups, kind of these community groups that kind of stand near a central spot on a reef, or like, I don't know. I know that there's some in Sydney, and basically they're volunteers that talk to people on their daily walk about what's out there in the ocean and what they're doing for conservation. So that might be an avenue that students and university students could do. And
there's also many wonderful citizen science initiatives come up hugely in the last 10 years, where you can, and it can be just downloading an app on your phone and recording a small amount of data, depending what time's available to you. Not everyone can volunteer. And it can give you reading about the projects and how they operate, and sometimes you can have opportunities to connect with the researchers that run these projects. Can be a way, if your time and resources are limited, to connect to science.
Thank you. I can't help it. They're just great questions coming through here. One last one says, do you have to live near the ocean to be a marine scientist? As marine scientists, we have, as professionals, there are about 220 work days in a year. The rest is holidays, weekends, public holidays. So 220 work days a year. We're probably only going and touching the ocean as professionals, maybe 10 to 30 of those days a year. And so it's not as if that we're going to getting our feet wet all of the time. And so there's tremendous opportunity to do the marine science in plenty of places, not just touching the ocean. For example, the videos I said we were collecting on this voyage, we could be analysing those anywhere in Australia. And one of the things that made me think about that is that's another way that young people can get involved in marine science, is looking at helping with data analysis, because we're collecting so much of it these days and it can be done anywhere. You could be sitting in your home office or Central Australia analysing data that's been collected from satellites, from remote vehicles, or from ships. So it's incredibly diverse now. I wrap up. Thank you. That's all we've got time for today. Thank you so much for the great discussion and the live questions that came in. We hope you take away something from today's session. There are other great questions in the chat, and between Zoe, Beth, and myself, we'll come back and answer those for all of you. Have a great rest of your day. Tamara, wrap us up as quick as you can.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Zoe, Beth, and Alistair. Gosh, that was swell, pun intended. It was so inspiring to hear all your career journeys and the great discussion for our audience. Thank you to all of the classrooms and officers who have joined today. We hope that you have something to take away from this session. That's left me with a better idea about how many different career paths are available in ocean science. Please join us for our next Shape Your Future on July 31st, where we'll be acknowledging NAIDOC Week with a special session exploring traditional knowledge with Professor Alex Brown. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and see you next time.